Hi there, my name's Cassie Nobbs. I'm a physiotherapist at Comox Physiotherapy in beautiful British Columbia, Canada. Welcome to my channel, Healthy Movement with Physio Cassie. My passion is helping people find healthy movement, whether that means running your first marathon or maybe doing 100 kilometers, or maybe it means playing with your grandchildren. Healthy movement to improve your quality of life. Hi there, welcome to Healthy Movement with Physio Cassie and the third part, probably the fourth and fifth video of my Injury Prevention for Runners series. This part is dedicated to core, both the torso and the hips, and was inspired by the Couch to 5K group with the Comox Valley Road Runners. As such, it is intended for the beginner to intermediate runner, but we will be covering some topics that will probably be good review or really even new information and quite interesting to the more advanced runner. Let's begin. So this is the theory section of the video. I'm hoping it's going to be a fair bit shorter than some of the other videos because a lot of what the reason why core work is important was covered in the form video. But let's first go over what core is. I do find clinically that a lot of people are a bit confused by core. They often think of it as being just the front of the body or the abdomen area. That's not true. That's not true at all. And in fact, core balance is probably the most important concept that I want to get across in this video. So if I use this little cushion to represent my core, it has a top, it has a bottom, it has a front, it has a back, and it has sides. So does our core. The top is the diaphragm, the bottom is the pelvic floor, the front is more of the abdominal area that people usually think of as core. The sides are the abdominal obliques plus some of your back musculature, and then of course there's the back musculature here. So when you're working your core, what's important is that you actually have balance in that system. So I'm going to be talking about things like front planks or front bridges. Those words are used interchangeably, same as side planks and side bridges and posterior planks or posterior bridges. And that's back of the body. And bridging is usually the one that we think of as being a posterior bridge when I use that word, so that hopefully that clarifies that. I'll also be discussing rotation. So rotation is not an exercise that we do exclusively with the core. We usually combine it with something else, like the back of the body or the front of the body, to achieve some strengthening while you're working another part of the core as well. So I'll be incorporating some rotational movements in with my front planks, my bridges, my side planks, and my other side exercises. So that covers the what is the core. Now, why do we need to work it? I'm going to go over this really quickly. If you want more information about movement dysfunction, please go back to my form and drills video, because this is covered quite a bit in there. So most importantly, core, it stabilizes the torso to prevent unwanted motion. So when you land on the leg, the unwanted motion that often happens is that the pelvis drops, and then the trunk will side bend. Sometimes the knee will collapse inwards, and you'll actually often get a little bit of, if I back up a bit, you can see this better, a little bit of collapse into the inside edge of the foot. So it's this kind of thing that can happen with core, which is why I include some hip work into my core work for runners, because a lot of that femoral movement, so this is your femur here, a lot of that movement is controlled by the hip. The torso stuff is controlled by the torso, and so on and so forth. You could even include, if you want to talk about core for runners, you could even include lower leg and foot as part of the core, because core is really about movement control more than anything else. The other adverse motions that we get with running that core helps to control is excessive motion through the spine. So as I'm bringing my leg forwards, what I don't want is for my spine to be flexing or extending too much either direction. And the same thing when I get to push off. If I get to push off here and my abdominals are not strong enough to counterbalance the activation at the back of my body, I'm going to get a hyper extension through the back, or a hyperlordosis, and that can create some compression back here. So that idea of movement control works for both planes of motion, whether we're talking about this plane of motion or we're talking about the front to back plane of motion, just in a slightly different way. So I often talk about core balance, and core balance is basically the concept of your abdominal area of your core, so the front of your body, should be approximately equal in strength to the back of the body. And ideally, your side core is going to be at least, so minimum of, if it's stronger than this, it's totally fine, but minimum of 75% of the front and the back. So the example that I'm going to give here is 1 minute. Let's say you can hold an exercise, a front plank from your hands for 1 whole minute before you start to shake too much and lose your form. You should be able to do an equivalent bridging exercise for 1 minute, and that would be a 1-to-1 ratio there. And you should be able to do an equivalent side plank exercise for 45 seconds. If you can do those things, then you're meeting sort of the benchmarks for core balance. And core balance is really important because, as I mentioned previously, if your abdominal muscles are too strong compared to your low back muscles, that changes your posture, or vice versa. If your abdominal muscles aren't strong enough and you go to do your push-off, boom, you're going to get this hyper extension through the low back. I'm going to go over briefly the concept of trying to self-assess a little bit to get an idea of whether you might have a significant imbalance. This is a bit tricky, so if you're unsure of yourself, that might be something that you would want to consult with a professional about to have that balance assessed. I do this all the time with my athletes. So what I've got here is a tiger tail. If you're a runner, you might already be familiar with this. We use them a lot for self-massage. Little IT band work there. And what I've done is I've put a weight on this tiger tail. Now, if I hold this like this, I'm going to get tired really quickly. In fact, I'm already getting tired and I can't keep holding it up. Whew, that's hard. If I hold it like this, well, that's a lot easier, and I can hold it there for quite some time. And if I hold it like this, well, that's pretty easy. Like, I could hold this till the cows come home. So that's what I was talking about when I was saying about an equivalent front plank to a bridge. You have to equate your body angles to some degree, and the same thing with side plank. So now we're going to talk about body angles and how to do a self-test to assess whether or not your core is balanced, or if you have an area that's profoundly weak compared to others that you might need to concentrate on a little bit more. So about the easiest position that you can do that will allow you to know that you're getting approximately an equal trunk angle is to do your self-assessment from elbows. So front plank from elbows, I'll show you how to adjust the bridge in just a second, and then side plank from elbows. So let's do front plank first. So I'm going to get into my front plank position. Elbows are here. I'm going to step my feet out and drop my hips. And I'm just going to hold this position for as long as I can. Shaking is okay, but if you start to fail and drop like this, then you get to self-correct once, but if you can't continue to hold it, then your test is done. So let's pretend that I was able to hold this for approximately 45 seconds, which would actually be a stretch for me. Oh no, let's make that a minute to make it easier to understand. Okay, so there's my 1 minute of front plank. So now I need to have an equivalent bridge. Now, the easiest way to figure that out is, well, how high is my shoulder? And you want your hips to be approximately the same height. How high is my shoulder compared to if I'm on my forearm, pardon me. So here I am, and I happen to have this lovely little stool, which works great, in place. So if I do my bridge such that my feet are up on this stool, and I have maybe a slight bend in the knee, then my bridge is going to be approximately the same body angle as my front plank from elbows. And then I'm going to hold this position. And ideally, I would be able to hold this for the same amount. So that, in this case, in the example that I've given you, that would be 1 minute. All right, so there's your back bridge. Now, this is also a bridge, but as you can see, my body angle is different, so it's easier. So I can't compare this to a front plank from elbows. I might be able to compare this maybe approximately to a front plank from my hands, but not from elbows. All right, now the other way you can do that bridge is also just to walk your feet out until your hips are approximately the same height as your shoulder would have been in the other position. So now we're going to do side plank from forearm. So with side plank, it is, if you have a sensitive shoulder, this can be difficult. I usually get people to lie on their side. Their knees are slightly bent. Their feet are 1 foot in front of the other, a la zo. and then you lift up like this. You can put a hand on the opposite shoulder as, oops, covering my microphone. Hand on the opposite shoulder is quite helpful. I'm not going to do that right now. And then you would hold this position. Now, ideally, if my other two positions were 1 minute, then I would be able to do this for 45 seconds. That would be the goal. So if you had one, and you would do that on the other side and compare sides. The sides should be 1-to-1. So if you had one body part that was particularly strong compared to the other body parts, so for me, my back body is stronger than my abs, so my bridging is easier than my planking, and more profoundly though, I really struggle with side plank. So I've had hip issues my entire running career, and that's probably why. My side plank and my hips are not as strong as they should be. So when I set up my core program for myself, I'm probably going to focus a little bit more on the side plank piece than I am on the front plank, and that even more so than I am on the rear plank or the bridge. I hope that makes sense. All right, let's start going over what you can do to strengthen your core. So now for the fun part, we actually get to work on a core routine together. I'm going to take you through the core routine that I frequently do. This may or may not be appropriate for you. You might have to decrease the difficulty, and I'll go through some options during this all. What I will say is that I usually set up my core routine based on my right side plank strength, because that is my weaker side and that is my weakest motion. So I like to shoot for 45 seconds. So 45 seconds of some version of right side plank with a 15-second break so that I can change positions and just kind of roll through it. So I use this interval timer. It's just called interval timer. It's free, and I'll put the information for that in the description for this video, and I will also include a screenshot of the app as it appears in your store. Okay, let's start with going over side plank with a clamshell from the knees, which is my favorite version of side plank to do for 45 seconds as a runner and with my current strength level. So I'm going to talk you through the form on the side plank with clamshell first for a moment, because it is a little bit tricky. So knees are slightly forward of the hips, so you've got a bit of a bend here. My feet are tucked in really close so that they're parallel to the end of my mat there. And when I lift up, I'm going to push my hips forward. So now I'm in a side plank from my knees and my elbow, and I'm going to add a clamshell motion to that. And that actually gets my hip going, which is great. So now I'm doing two things. I'm strengthening my hip, and I'm working on my side plank at the same time. So from this direction, so that you can see what's happening, lifting, pushing the hips forward, and like so. All right, so that's the only tricky exercise that I'm going to be doing in terms of form. So now we're actually going to go through the routine. So 45 seconds of side plank on one side. We're going to do 45 seconds of a version of front plank. We're going to do 45 seconds of side plank on the other side, and then we're going to do 45 seconds of a bridge. All right, let's begin. Okay, here we're going to start. I'm going to start my interval timer now. 3, 2, 1. This is the beginning of my 45 seconds. So I'm here. I can be lifting my knee as we're doing this 45 seconds. I'm going to show you some other options as well. I am squeezing my bum forward pretty strongly. You can also straighten the leg out so it's a little bit behind you, not in front. And you can do like a little tiny lift off the ground and then back down, almost like you're trying to kick something away from behind you. Kicking away, go. And I'll often mix this up as I'm in the side plank, because I find planking and core work pretty dang boring. So the more I can switch it up, maybe I lift my arm up, maybe I add a little rotation through here, and then lift, and rotate through here, and then lift, and the next thing I know, there's my beeper, my 45 seconds is over. So next version, we're going to do a front plank. So I have 15 seconds to change my body position. I'm going to get onto my elbows again, because that's a comparable body angle. I'm going to start from my knees, because again, that's comparable to what I was doing with the front plank. Now, as I said, I get bored really easily, so I might go from here to lifting a knee lifting the other knee, which is a really great option for runners because you're squeezing your bum and your quad in combination with your abs, which is kind of what they have to do while you're running. And this is actually pretty challenging. So I might not be able to stay here for the whole 45 seconds, so what might I do to make this a bit easier? Well, I could step myself up 2 hands and hold that position, and I could go back down. That's interesting. I could go back up. I could add rotation. And there we go. There's my 45 seconds all done. So now we're going to do my side plank from the other side. Getting in position, knees are bent, legs are stacked, lifting up, pushing the hips strongly forward, maybe sticking the leg out back, lift and lower slightly, lift and lower. Work through that maybe. Maybe I'm going to do 10 reps of this. 10. The goal here is to keep the torso nice and steady. And if you're adding leg movements, you don't want to be doing a lot of like wiggling your trunk too much as you do that. So same thing here. And this is noticeably easier for me than the other side. So remember how I talked about that core balance piece? This is really easy on this side compared to the other side. I might add some rotation like this. So thread the needle and come back up. Anything like that, that's going to make it easier for me to find my way through that 45 seconds. Okay, and so now we're going to do a little bit of a version of bridge. So for me, I'm going to do this low bridge because I did it from elbows for everything else. So here's my low bridge, and this is actually this feels quite comfortable for me. My hamstrings are talking to me a little bit, so I might have to bring my feet in slightly if my hamstrings are too activated. I can pull my toes up like this and really push my heels into the ground. Now, here's my favorite little runner's piece, but this is a little bit more advanced. So I'm going to walk my feet in a bit because remember on the other side also I had my knees bent, so the angle was a little bit different. All right, so here I am, and what I want to do is really thrust my hips up as I bring a knee up towards my chest. So this is kind of simulating that activation of the glutes at your push-off. And there's my 45 seconds already done. So now we've gone through one full round of core work. And if you're doing this at home, you could just keep going with that pattern and do that 3 rounds through. I typically recommend that people do their core work 5 days a week if you're struggling with something. So again, going back to my example, my right hip side is kind of weak. So I would hopefully do at least my side planks 5 days a week. 3 days a week, you're probably still going to get improvement. And if you're on a maintenance schedule, if everything's going pretty well and you don't think you need to increase your strength that much, then on a maintenance schedule, 1 to 2 times per week can sometimes be enough. But it's never bad to work your core more than less. All right, I hope that's helpful in terms of actually going through a little routine that you can repeat. And finally, I'm going to just add a whole bunch of options for front plank, side plank, all that stuff. Okay, so we're going to go through another round of 45 seconds of each exercise, but this time I'm going to use a ball, so you have some ball options. And I'm going to try to go through, just give some examples of different things that you can do with the ball. The ball's a really great tool if you've got one. So, first things first, I'm going to demonstrate how to get onto the ball for a plank, because that's probably one of the trickiest pieces. So I'm going to, wait for it, roll into the frame. And now I'm on the ball. There we go, super easy. So you can see this from what position I start from. I'm going to do it one more time. So I kind of get into this little froggy position so that I'm not far from the ball, and then roll my chest onto it, and then there. So the farther out you walk on the ball for your plank, the harder the plank is going to be. Okay, so let's begin our 45-second little routine using the ball for both our planks, our bridges, and our side body core. Sort of side plank, but not quite. So hitting the start button on my timer. I've got 5 seconds to prepare. And here we go, there's my beeper, 45 seconds. So I'm here, I'm going to work from about here. This feels like it's about the right amount of work for me today. So I might do tuck in and then tuck back out as I'm in my plank, just to get something a little bit different going on. I might do a leg lift and a leg lift and a leg lift. This is quite advanced, this one, so not quite so easy. I might do a little bit of a shift from side to side on my hands, or even circles with my hands, a la zo. And I'm working my abs pretty hard here. I might even do a knees in and then add a little bit of rotation by shifting my hips to the side and coming back up and then back out. All right, there's my 45 seconds. So bridge, super easy. You just get down on the ground. Oops, don't sit on your microphone. Feet go up onto the ball. Here's my 45-second bell, and I'm gonna lift up. Now I love this exercise for core, for runners. So I'm here, I'm nice and straight. Just like we did with the other bridge, I can push up into like a push-off position with my knee driving forwards, almost as if I was running. This is quite difficult, just FYI. So if you're struggling, the closer in again the ball is, the little bit easier the exercise is. So if I'm here, all of a sudden this is much more manageable, and I might be able to do that for 45 seconds. Now I can also roll the ball towards my bum and go back out. I can also lift more up towards the ceiling and drop back down a bit. You could even put your feet on the ball and lift up. But there we go, there's my 45 seconds. So now we have to do the side of the body, which is a little bit more tricky. So you want to have some place where your feet, I'm going to need a little bit more time to set up for this. Sorry, it's going to be a bit longer than my typical 15-second break there. So you want to have some place for your feet to be against. So I usually at home I use a wall or wedge my feet kind of in the corner between the wall and the rest of my body. So my hip is kind of on the corner of the ball. So if the ball was a square, my hip is on the corner. And I can hold in this position. And now I'm going to start my timer, because honestly I'm starting to work already. So I'm going to hit my timer. There's my prepare 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So now we're actually starting my 45 seconds here. Now I'm barely putting any weight on my hand. I could lift it up if I wanted to. I can put it back down. Now this is something that's actually really great, just to lift and lower with the hand. So you're not just holding for the whole 45 seconds. You can also do a reaching down to the ground with the other hand and then arm up towards the ceiling to create a little bit of rotation again. Always like to incorporate rotation into my core work, especially with my side planks. Like so. I could also do both hands up and lower and lift, but this is very difficult. I haven't done that in a long time. My poor little right hip needs some work. It needs to be strengthened up a bit more. So here I am. There's my 45 seconds. All right, and then I'm going to do the other side. Now with this one here, you might notice that I didn't do, the other one I did bridge and then, oops, sorry, I got to go this way. So the other one, I split my side planks up, I think with the bridge. I can't remember for sure. I didn't do that on this side. So it is marginally better to do your side planks or to do your routine as front, front, one side, back, other side. Because it gives, oftentimes when we're doing side planks, I'm lifting and lowering my hand just to make it more interesting. Often when we're doing side plank, it works both sides. So it's nice to give one side, the side that's up or the side that's down, a little bit of a break before you switch and work it again in the other position. So it's nice to break it up with either the front plank or the bridge. All right, so there are some fun ball options. All right, so we're going to go through one more round, 45 seconds each. This time we're going to do plank from hands, side plank from hands, and we'll do another version of bridge. Similar to the one that we did before, but I wanted to show you this from hands version because you have a lot more options for adding movement through the torso and for adding rotation. So I'm going to hit my start button. I also have these weights in place. You'll see why in a second. I have 5 seconds to prepare. Here I am. So for front plank, I'm going to put my hands on the weight, step my legs out. Now remember, from knees and from elbows, we did this thing. You could do this. You could do leg lifts again, like so. You could also do, and this is the nice thing about doing from hands, you can bring knee to chest. You can bring knee to the opposite elbow, or to the same side elbow, and then to the opposite elbow, which incorporates some rotation. Chest, same side elbow, opposite elbow. Chest, same side elbow, opposite elbow. You could also do tilt. This adds some rotation, or rotation through, like so. So I added the weights just because it takes pressure off the wrists if you happen to have pain in your wrists when you do those types of movements. So same thing, I'm gonna go into my side plank though. So one side, so I'm here. Now if this was too much, which it feels like a lot to me, I'm gonna go to my knee on one side and maybe lift this leg. Now remember, when I'm doing my leg lifts, the goal is hips forward, and as you lift the leg, it's behind you, almost like a skater stride. Sorry, that's not a great angle. Let me try again. Here we go, from here, leg goes behind as you lift. Not here, that's gonna feed into hip flexor tightness, back here. And that's 14 seconds. Whew, I'm already getting really tired on that bottom hip, which is my weak hip, remember? And now I've gotten lazy and my hips have gotten back, so I'm gonna remind myself to get my hips forward. And my abs are starting to shake a little bit. All right, and there's my 45 seconds. Good thing I'm gonna split that up with my bridge, which, as I mentioned before, is my stronger movement. So, bridge position, getting into here. And I'm just gonna lift, and I'm gonna do a kick out, and a kick out, and a kick out. And this is a really great way to work your bridge as a runner. You don't want to be coming, so I did show you that version where you come up like this and really focus on pushing the hip forward. But when you're doing the emphasis there is the butt squeeze as you come forwards. Butt squeeze as I come up. And you can even use your hands to cue yourself a little bit there. But if you're here and you're doing your kickouts, the emphasis is keeping the hips high as you keep the leg low. So we're not doing this because that'll work your hip flexors too much. So straightening the leg out, come back. Straightening the leg out, come back. Easy 45 seconds, done. All right, so now we're gonna do my side plank from the other side. We'll see how much better this left side is than my right side. So I'm going to use a slightly different angle on this one for the camera, hopefully. My 45 seconds already started, so I hope you're already lifted into your side plank. Here's my side plank. There we go, like that. Or I can be doing it from knee with my foot out to here and lifting and lowering back behind me. Now, the emphasis here is not a high lift. It's a little lift going out behind. So not trying to do this. It's really important that you don't do this. That's way too much hip flexor activation. Not a good idea. So I'm starting to get tired, so I'm gonna drop my knees to here, squeeze my bum forward, or I could also do a little clamshell, just like we did from elbows. Or I could add a little bit of rotation, just like we did from elbows. And there's my 45 seconds up. All right, so there's 3 different rounds with a lot of different exercise variations within them. I hope that gives you lots of good ideas for how to work your core. So based on the length of this video so far, I am going to do a separate video for the hip work, the basic hip work that I like to do. I also plan on doing another video on my favorite strengthening exercises for legs for runners that aren't necessarily specific hip core exercises. Core balance is probably one of the biggest components of doing core work, so making sure you know where your weaknesses are, maybe working those weaknesses a little harder, or at least basing your whole core program around those weaknesses. In my example, it's my right hip girdle. My right hip is weaker than the rest, so my right side plank is harder to do, and I would base all of my core work on that and make sure I'm working that right side plank a lot. And the left side plank too, but trying to get them as even as possibly can. My bridges are really good. I don't need to work my bridging very much, but I like to work them, so I do anyway. And planking is a tough one for me too. I hope all that helps, and I hope you look forward to getting the hip video and also the leg strengthening video, which I'm planning for sometime this week. Fingers crossed. Finally, here comes the awkward self-promotion piece. I do one-on-one consultations all the time for runners, other types of athletes, regular Joes, grandmas just trying to get up off the ground. If you're interested in having a consultation with me, those can be done in person. We have COVID protocols in place for that if you're in the Comox Valley area. If you're not in the Comox Valley area, I am doing telehealth consultations, and as you can see, the video format actually works pretty well. And you could even take a video of yourself running and send it to me. I could analyze it and send the video analysis back to you. I hope that's helpful. If you are interested in booking an appointment, please contact us through comoxphysio.com. Thank you.